Are we live now?
Yeah.
Okay. So, I guess here today we're talking about cosmetic dentistry. And one of the things that we often hear, our patients are coming to us and will be queried as to why they're coming to us. And we always like to get an understanding before we meet a new person as to why they're here. And they'll say they're interested in cosmetic dentistry. And the reality is that you already sort of know what level of education they're coming with, because technically there is no such thing as a cosmetic dentist. The American Dental Association, Gary, as you know, doesn't even recognize cosmetic dentistry as a specialty.
Right.
So honestly, it's restorative dentistry, which then there are some catchphrases for that, which cosmetic dentistry is an easy one to use that resonates with patients. But the reality is, I like to think of it as aesthetic dentistry.
It is aesthetic dentistry.
And that aesthetic dentistry, it has to be married along with function.
Function, exactly.
We can certainly make people's smiles look great.
Right.
But if it doesn't last more than a short period of time, then what good is it? It's a waste of time.
Right. So what we look at is the proportion of the centrals to the laterals to the cuspids. We look at the smile line, the relationship of the incised ledge to the lower lip, and that the lips actually frame the smile. So there's various facets that we have to consider. Then also the shape, and the shape of the teeth have to align with the shape of the person's face. Some people have oval shapes, and other people have very squarish faces, so we have to take that into consideration. So there's other facets besides just calling yourself a cosmetic dentist that comes into play here.
When we think of cosmetic dentistry, when I think of an individual, what am I trying to achieve? Essentially, I'm trying to achieve symmetry, proportional symmetry.
Right.
And so we line that up with patients' faces,
Right.
Reference points that give us some sort of sense of symmetry. In fact, actually, that's where we are able to kind of mask some of these problems that we see, because we can't really fix people perfectly, but we just need to have it make it so that we are able to fool most people's brains and eyes into knowing that that looks normal.
Right.
So when there's an imbalance, our brains pick that up just like that.
Right.
But we try to mask the imperfections and shoot for a bigger target of that instead of a pinpointed idea of perfection.
Exactly. Yeah.
When it comes to color and we're great at shape, but we have to, one of the reasons why we have our own lab and our employees that are in that area, our expertise, or they're experts in fabricating these types of restorations. Having an individual like that on premise is a bit like practicing dentistry in the Shangri-La world, because most dentists, probably 98% of them in the country, have to send theirs to a remote lab, and they don't have the restorations fabricated on premise using the same light.
Right.
And it's awesome these days that we can take digital photographs, and yes, there are programs out there that help to calibrate colors between different screens that remote from ours, but there's just no substitute for using the same ambient light and being able to fabricate it and actually on premise, and actually have our ceramists and our technicians actually meet our patients to understand the personality, because there's so much more to just making a tooth fit into a space.
Right. I'm glad you brought that up, because there is a process that we go through. So we have to talk to the patient to figure out exactly what her or his endpoint is going to be. So we have to then, a person comes in with, say, imperfect teeth, or teeth that are not aligned perfectly. We have to correct some of these things. And some of these things we can do with the veneers, but others have to do some orthodontia prior to going through the process. But so we do talk to the patient in depth to figure out exactly what it is that we want to create. So we come to a mutual understanding before we start, and that's usually done either by taking pictures of the patient's teeth and then putting it on the screen, and using a PowerPoint to show the patient what they will look like as a finished endpoint, or we can do a wax up and show them a physical model. So it just depends on how they want to approach it.
Right. What really ultimately what that's really pointing us in the direction to is actually understanding the patient's expectations.
Right.
And we always know that these are most successful when we have met patients' expectations, and when we have not met their expectations, then typically that leads to upset. And so clearly nobody wants that. So the idea is to make sure that you understand what the patient's expectations are prior to beginning any procedures, so that becomes a very personal discussion as to what is it that you really want. And all those other tools that you just mentioned, such as a diagnostic wax-up or digital imaging of their smile to understand what the before and after may look like, is all geared towards being able to educate an individual, raise their understanding, and so that they can be the ones who can make the decision, because it's a partnership on being able to get them there.
Exactly.
We can certainly know what might look good for us, but how do we know that's what the individual wants to see in themselves? So I think that's really where where time is necessary to be able to be taken in the beginning to understand what those expectations are, and that's why we go through such thorough diagnostic processes. And those all those different types of things that we don't probably have enough time in this live post here to be able to discuss, but we certainly know that it does take a bit of time of at least 1 full hour of an appointment to be able to gather the information necessary to be able to actually formulate a plan that has the endpoint in mind, with the patient's expectations being considered in that endpoint.
Exactly. Now, I know another aspect of this process, of course, is the cost of the veneers, and I think we need to address that too.
Yeah.
So, the veneers, of course, are highly technical in the way we prepare them, and then the way they're fabricated, and the way that they are inserted into or onto the prepared teeth. So it's not a simple matter. So it does take a certain level of expertise in order to be able to deliver the end product. But the cost factor is basically you're paying for the knowledge of the dentist and the expertise of the dentist that you're going to. We consider ourselves to be experienced in that area of dentistry, and we have a lot of patients that have been very happy with the end result. So, there's a value in going to someone that knows exactly what they're doing and how to accomplish a given task, such as veneers.
It's a highly customized process, and that's one of the big reasons why I'll go back to having a lab on premise, which you have individuals in there that are geared directly towards this one patient. Is important because we're able to spend time. We're able to spend time on being able to customize it perfectly. These aren't things that we pick off of a shelf and they're already pre-made. These are completely made from scratch. And we can essentially make it look like just about anything we want, tooth-wise, but does it fit for you? And being able to nail it on the first go, I'd say that most dentists, even highly trained ones like ourselves, don't necessarily get it right exactly on the first time. But in the real world, outside of not having your own lab, guess what you do? You have to send it off to the lab, put the patient back into the provisionals, and spend some more time at another later date. Guess what that does? That sort of leads to unmet expectations. Everybody gets excited about being able to get that delivery, that smile, that thing that they want to see, that's going to make them happy. It's the end point. Nothing's more disappointing than when it doesn't go. And being able to send it back to our lab for, just did it today, 15 minutes of time, to be able to perfect the crown, deliver it. Guess what? We've now saved them at least 2 appointments, being able to get there, and also then be able to have that level of expectation met on that one day. That makes it for a really good Friday when we're leaving out the office, that we have happy people.
It makes the patient happy, makes us happy.
Yeah, absolutely.